What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Fish Lift Eat podcast. My name is Casey. Thanks for tuning in with us again today. Joining me today is a guest I'm really looking forward to. Sitting around and chopping it up with. We've kind of we've had a lot of fly fishing content here lately, and for those that have been listening to us for a while, that's not exactly my forte. So joining me today is Tripp Noojin. What's going on, Tripp?
Not much. Thanks for having me.
Well, I won't spill a whole lot of beans on your background and what you do and why I'm so excited about having you on here. But so just a little bit of info. Tripp he's a tournament angler, tournament bass angler, fishing the Bassmaster Series. The EQ, so that's the elite qualifiers, trying to make it into the Elite Series with the big dogs. So we're gonna get to talk about some good bass fishing today, and I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, me too. I'm excited to sit down and get some of these thoughts out of my brain because in the off season, all we do is sit around and think about going fishing again. So it'd be good to get some of this out. Maybe I'll get some sleep tonight.
Absolutely. It's funny today. I actually, behind my screen right here, it looks like an absolute train wreck because I actually pulled my boat in the driveway, and in my head I was going to start organizing tackle and getting it ready because next week I'm actually heading up into South Carolina, going to start pre-fishing a few lakes that are on the schedule this year that I've not spent a lot of time on. So I'm going to go start scanning around and piecing some stuff together. So I was like, well, I'll start on, cleaning the boat, getting it back organized. And I'm kind of a wuss when it becomes cold weather, and I don't want to sit out on the deck of my boat outside. So it's just all, it's a tackle shop bomb has gone off in my room in here, rods and tackle trays and all that. But it's all right. It gives us a way to stay in tune with it through the off season.
That's right. It gives you something to do.
Yeah.
I'm bad about being out in the cold too. I can't stand it.
It don't necessarily bother me whenever, in January gets here and tournament season kicks back off and we're actually on the water. But yeah, I don't care a whole lot for it whenever, having to sit out there and rig rods and, organize tackle and all that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So Tripp, tell us a little bit, give our listeners a little bit of background about yourself, kind of how you got into fishing, and then how you got into tournament fishing, what you're doing currently, and where you planning on being in the future.
Okay. So I grew up in South Alabama, in Mobile, actually, and I had my grandparents lived about 2 hours north of there, and so I grew up kind of spending summers and weekends during hunting season with them on the farm, and that's where I learned how to fish. But down there at the time, there wasn't a lot of bass fishing going on that anybody in my family was doing. So I learned how to fish, catching brim and bluegill and catfish and really whatever would bite out of the Tennessee Tom Bigby River and or Tennessee Tom Bigby Waterway is what they call it. And I didn't really get into to bass fishing until much later. I went to after high school. I went to the University of Alabama, and then after I left Alabama, I went to work for the sheriff's office in Northeast Alabama for Etowah County. And I kind of got in with some guys there around the law enforcement community who were also big bass fishermen. The Coosa River runs right through the middle of Etowah County there, and so we had Weiss Lake and Neely Henry. That's really where I learned how to fish. I fell in with some guys that really enjoyed it. The tournament bug kind of bit me. I'd always been very competitive in nature, but riding night shift in a patrol car for 6 or 8 years kind of puts the pounds on you, and you get lazy, and you're not really doing any sporting events anymore. But fishing seemed like something that I could compete in without having to stay in shape, so that's where I went. And kind of never looked back.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, it's not as physically grueling as some, but there's also some times where where I definitely feel like I need to tighten a few things up whenever, especially get into some of these multi-day tournaments and stuff.
Oh
It'll
yeah,
wear on you a little bit.
yeah, yeah. I'm starting to feel that now. I'm almost 40, and I swear, every time I wake up to go fishing, I swear there's a new ache or pain or muscle I've never felt before that needs working out.
So this is where I could really plug like our training programs that we've got over at Hunt Lift Eat. You can get on there and get you fixed up.
Yeah, absolutely. I did actually when I first started following the Hunt Lift Eat um, guys. I ordered one of those programs, like the it's like the very basic one they've got, like Couch to Mountain or something like that. I
Yeah.
can't remember the name of it. And
Mm-hmm.
did it for a little while. I enjoyed that. That type of. I've always been that way. I've been a hunter longer than I've been a fisherman, and I really love being outside. I tell people all the time, I can't be a trail runner. I can't be like a mountain biker. But if I'm trying to kill something, I can go for hours and hours and hours and never slow down. Doesn't bother me at all. But if I'm just out there trying to exercise, it gets tough on me.
Yeah, it's different when you got a little bit of drive and wanting to go after
Mm-hmm.
something.
Yeah, the bloodthirst, I think, is what does it.
So where how old were you, would you say, whenever you fished your first tournament? If you when you
Oh,
got
it's
into it later.
yeah. So I fished my first tournament on Neely Henry as a co-angler in 2000, and so I graduated in 2007. Went to work. I would say it was probably the spring of 2009.
Okay.
I fished a tournament on Henry as a co-angler, and I had only been fishing for a couple of months, and I think I came in like eighth place or something, and it wasn't a huge tournament. I think I made $400 or $500, something like that, and man, it was like just blew my mind. I was like, you can make money doing this, and I just like lost it. I had that money spent before I got back to the house.
Yeah, that's worse than any drug, I think, is the first time you walk away from a fishing tournament with a check. It don't matter how much it is.
There's no
You know,
doubt.
I can remember. So like my first tournament was like a Wednesday nighter
Mm-hmm.
and I didn't have a boat. I didn't have anything. And
Mm-hmm.
I just knew a lot of guys in the area and I'd show up. I was like 13, I think. Yeah. Yeah. I was 13 or 14 and, would show up and somebody would always, be solo or something. And I'd just jump in the boat with whoever.
Yep.
And yeah, I can remember the first time when we won. I didn't even have enough money to like split entry fees or give gas money or nothing. Like these guys were awesome and would just let me fish with them wherever I could. And I'll never forget one of them split the winnings with me whenever we won it, and that was I still have that bug. Like I'll never get over that feeling. It doesn't matter what level I get to.
Oh yeah. It's all about. Yeah, I think what I like about it, the only thing I like about it more than the just the competitive atmosphere of it all is that it's one of those places that you can't help but learn something new. Something surprises you that you didn't have any idea about, before. Uh, I've got a quote on the front of my boat that says, it's the second part of my favorite saying. My favorite saying, just of all time, is that um, no man ever steps in the same river twice, because he is not the same man and it is not the same river, or it is not the same river and he's not the same man. That's one of my favorite quotes, and I've got um, for it is not the same river and he's not the same man quoted on the front of my boat. And I really believe that. I really believe that anytime you get on the water, you're in a different place than you've ever been, inside your brain and where you happen to be standing. And it's just easy to learn something new. It seems like every time you go. And so I think that's what really attracts me to the sport more than anything.
Yeah, oh, that's for sure. And I think that's where a lot of people kind of hit that roadblock too whenever they're trying to progress as an angler, when you start having to, look at stuff through a new unbiased perspective, even if it is on your home lake, that thing's changing year after year. Conditions are changing day to day. And, when people get kind of stuck in their, in their old habits, it prevents us from getting better and gaining new experiences and knowledge and ultimately becoming that well-rounded angler that it takes to to compete at a high level.
That's for sure. That's for sure. I learned a lot about that this year. This was my first real season to take um, a long, hard trip on the road and spend a bunch of time fishing tournaments with a goal like making the Elite Series. And I learned a lot of lessons. I felt like I took several of them right on the chin, because that's a group of 200 of the best anglers on the planet. There's no doubt about that. And
Yeah, every one of those guys can catch them. Every single one of them.
Every one of them. There's not. That's what I learned. I started out at the beginning of the season. I was like, well, some of these guys probably just had some money to burn and they're just throwing it at it because they love to go fishing. And that's really not the case in the EQs, especially. That was the first lesson I learned was that was 173 guys that absolutely know how to catch fish, and they just went out there and found them. There was nothing. You did not find fish that somebody else didn't find. There was no place safe on any of the lakes we went to. And it was a learning curve for me for sure.
So just for our listeners, those 173 anglers that he's talking about, the EQ anglers, those guys are fishing 9 tournaments across the country for the top 9 spots. The top 9 get to go on and compete at the Bassmaster Elite Series. But out of 173 people that are traveling all across the country competing at these high-level tournaments, they're fishing for 9 spots. So just to put that in perspective, like there's 173 people, that have that drive and have that self-confidence that they can go out and perform at a high enough level to be one of those top 9 and progress on.
Yeah.
So that's nuts. So what did you fish any previous type trails, with a major organization or anything, or did you just jump straight into the opens?
Yeah, no, I've been kind of working my way up for a long time. I fished as a co-angler for a couple of years in the BFLs and on the ABA, the American Bass Anglers trails. They had an open series trail that you could jump in as a co-angler, and then and that's ultimately where I started out as a boater. Also, is just seemed like a good place to get my feet wet. And I had a little bit of success as a co-angler there, and was comfortable with that crowd. It's still very regional and localized, and so you know a bunch of the other boaters and stuff in your area and those tournaments you're fishing. So I felt comfortable there. And then while I was doing that was probably 8 years ago, I think, when I swapped over to the boater side. And while I was doing that, I jumped in a couple of Bass Opens and at the time Costa Series tournaments with FLW as a co-angler, just to kind of gauge my abilities at that level, and had some success there. I had a 4th place finish as a co-angler in the Bassmaster Open on Chickamauga in 2019. And ultimately, that's when I decided that I could probably fare well as a boater in those as well. And so the next year, I think that was around the same time that FLW was, or that MLF came along and then ultimately purchased FLW, and that big paradigm shift that we've all been just in awe of for the last 5 or 6 years. And
right.
So that next year, the Costas went to the Toyota Series, and they had a tournament. They had a division that was just right here in my backyard. And so I fished those as a boater. So I did that for like one division for a couple of years, and then I think I did 2 or 3 divisions for a couple of years. And then ultimately, when you sit down and look at it all, and you get really serious about wanting to do something like that for a living, it feels like, and I don't know if some of it's just nostalgia, how you grew up, what you grew up watching on TV, or how you kind of feel about all the different tournament trails, but it just felt like to me that if I was going to make it to the top, that the Elite Series was where I wanted to be. And so I was already kind of leaning towards moving from Toyotas back over to the Opens and trying my hand there. And then when they announced the new EQ division last year, I couldn't say no to it. So And I think that's where I'm at. Uh, I'll either make the elites through the EQs, or I'll just run out of money or die on a river somewhere.
So I was going to bring it up and ask you what your thoughts were on it, but now that you already kind of mentioned it, this was the first year that Bass kind of switched to that EQ format.
Mm-hmm.
It kind of, I guess depending on how you want to look at it, kind of made it a little more difficult to make it to the elites through that format. What
Yeah.
was, I mean, I know you said that was kind of a selling point for you. I've talked to some guys, that were kind of discouraged about it because, a lot of people don't have 9 weeks vacation that they can take off through the year to be able to go pursue that kind of thing. So,
Right.
I mean,
Yeah. I knew it was going to be tough, and just recognized it as that. I think that Bass did a really good job of explaining their position when they first, they didn't really shy away from why they made the decisions they did about how they wanted to begin to welcome folks into that arena of the Elite Series.
mm-hmm,
And they've been under scrutiny, and just a lot of lip service really over the last few years about the way they were letting people make it to the elites in a 3 tournament division. And then those guys, not all of them, some of them have done really well and were able to stay there, but several of those guys who made it through those single divisions made it to the elites, and then,
we're there
found out
for a
that they
year.
didn't. Yeah, they're there for a year, and then they're right back down in the opens, and whether they didn't have the support from home, or they didn't have the money, or they just didn't have the energy that it took to travel for 11 or 12 weeks out of the year just to keep up with all that stuff. Um, and so I think it was a good move on their part, if for no other reason than it shows us all what it's going to be like. I mean, you can't really have any reservations about it, whether or not you'll be able to make it on the elites if you are able to qualify for the elites by fishing all 9 tournaments. I mean, and really, there's been a lot of talk, and some of the pros that have come back. Iconelli was talking about it on a podcast the other night, that if he had to, when he made the swap back from MLF, went back to Bass, he only had to do it through one division, and
Mm-hmm.
he felt like it was even a harder thing to do, because he only had to be focused on 3 tournaments to get there, and it's hard to stay on to really be good through 9 tournaments. You're talking about every season that we go through. You're talking about, you know, 4 or 5 different regions of the country, and every different species of fish. And it's just, or at least black bass. And it's a difficult thing to do.
Yeah, for sure. I've heard many guys that are on the Elite Series right now that anytime that they talk about the Opens, all I hear them calling it's just the gauntlet. The
Yeah.
gauntlet that the Opens is, because for every reason, like you just mentioned, the on the water stuff's one thing. Competing against those guys is as good as they are, but then just it's got to be grueling, loading up
Yeah.
and driving across the country like that, spending that much time away from home, away from family, away from your life to chase this dream that we all have. And, I think that's a piece that doesn't really get mentioned a whole lot. It's kind of the mental toughness that it takes to stay focused on that, because, you might be, you know, flipping for largemouth in Florida today, and then in the back of your head you got to be preparing for smallmouth in New York or smallmouth up towards Canada, and then meeting somewhere in the middle, fishing some herring lakes for spotted bass. Like
Yeah.
it's always changing, and there's so many factors that go into it that I don't think the normal person or even the normal angler realizes.
Mm-hmm.
So my
Yeah.
hat's
It's
off to
pretty,
you for taking that on, because that's an awesome thing to do.
I appreciate it. It's like the only, I tell people I spent, I guess right at 16 years now in law enforcement. And people, every time somebody comes up to me and says, "Thank you for your service," or "We appreciate what you did for us," my response has kind of always been, it's really the only thing I was ever good at. I got out of college and I started doing it, and I was good at it. And so I just kept doing it forever. And fishing seems to be the only other thing that I've found that I feel like I'm pretty good at. And so I don't know what to do besides just run full steam at it till I run out of steam. So,
Right.
my wife
Yeah.
says if it wasn't hard, I wouldn't do it.
Well, if it wasn't hard, you wouldn't appreciate it at the end anyway.
That's right.
That whenever you get to stand there on the stage after the last EQ and and hold that little plaque that says whatever your elite series member, that's going to make all that hardship a lot more sweet.
Man, I can't even imagine what that's like. Those guys, the guys that made it this year, several of them are really young, much younger than me, and didn't even they haven't even. I make the joke that they haven't even had the time to grow up watching the elites like I did. I mean, I watched them for 30 years before I made a run at it, and they, it's just I really can't even fathom what it would feel like to stand on that stage at the end of the year, knowing that it's something like that, a door like that was opening for me the next season. But one day I'll know.
You'll get there.
I'll come back and let you know what it feels like.
Yeah, so we're going to go ahead and get it scheduled now so that this time next year when the EQs wrap up, and you're trying to figure out how you're going to, when you're booking your Airbnbs and stuff for the Elite Series, what that'd be for the 2025 Elite Series.
Yeah, the 25 season.
We gotta have you back on to have a little bit of follow up to this, because hopefully by that time I'm making travel plans to go fish the All-American too.
Yeah, there you go. I don't know. I think that would probably be the greatest comeback in history of any sport comeback you've ever heard of. Because if you followed me at all this year, you'd see that it was a pretty dismal performance on my part. But like I said, I felt like I learned a lot of lessons, and I think I'll be considerably more dangerous, at least to the fish, next year.
Absolutely. So with all your time spent on the road at all these different fisheries and all that, you probably got a couple good stories from it, or what were maybe a couple of your highlights from your season this year?
I tell you what, this season was really kind of a grind for me, and I would say I know that I know it's weird to say it out loud, because you think when you're in a group of guys like that, you think that you're able to catch a limit every day. But I went from the first tournament of the Toyota Series in 22 at Okeechobee was the last time I weighed 2 limits of fish on back-to-back days until we went to the Harris Chain in early October this year. And so going through all those tournaments and either catching 1 or 2 good ones on the first day and not being able to fill out a bag, or catching a limit the first day and then the second day something changes and everything fell apart. It was just I began to feel very snake bit, like maybe it was me, and so I learned to kind of work through that adversity and try to understand better what it was that I wasn't keying in on, that I needed to pay attention to. And so I finally was able to bring it all together and at the Harris Chain this month, or well, it's November now, in October. And I was just super proud, man, to weigh two limits 2 days in a row. And I felt like I'd worked really hard for those fish. So that was kind of a small win for me, and it just felt really good. So that was probably one of my favorite moments of the season, was dropping that bag on the second day. And then I'd say probably the only other one that sticks out in my mind is day 2 at where was that? The Eufaula, Oklahoma. That tournament was just really difficult. I think that lake there were several of us that had trouble in practice finding anything over a 1.75 pound fish, something like that. And that lake has about, I don't know, like 12,000 floating docks on it, and I think I fished 7,500 of them during practice. I mean, it was
Right.
like I just flipped docks for as long as I could, and I knew I had a couple of areas picked out where I had some better bites, and it was just like a grind, and it was hot, and the fish weren't biting well during the tournament, and I thought that I had beat that snake bite. I weighed a limit on the first day, went out the second day, had 4 fish, and 15 minutes before I had to run back to the weigh-in, I hook into one that was every bit of 6 pounds. It was the biggest fish I'd seen in 3 weeks, and that fish came right up to the boat and basically just looked at me and opened his mouth, and my bait came flying out. And I
Oh,
looked
that's a
at it, and
heartbreaker.
I was flipping a little baby brush hog, and it wasn't even, the hook hadn't even come through the skin of the brush hog. I got that fish all the way to the boat without ever getting the hook point through the bait, and it was the most unreal. It was like he was just chewing on it, and then came up there and was like, and it was like, I remember watching that fish swim away, and I looked at my co-angler and I said, man, what a fun day. You know, like how much fun is that to almost be there? I thought I had it figured out, and I was like, what a fun day. That's all I
Oh,
could say. I couldn't even find a cuss word in me at the time.
oh, that's
So,
a heartbreaker.
yeah, it was, which everybody's got a story about the one that got away, pretty much every tournament that ever happens, but that one was memorable to me because I felt like I'd worked really hard for that fish, and they say when it's your time, it's your time, and I've for sure when it's not your time also. So
That's for sure. Anybody that's fished tournaments for a little bit, it seems like we end up with more of not our time than when it is our time. But it's pretty sweet when it all clicks.
yeah, yeah, for sure.
So what bodies of water? I know you talked about a few already, but where are your home lakes? I know you got 600 of them. It seems like they're around you in Alabama that are good, but
Yeah,
where's your
yeah,
favorite
we're
place to
in
go?
the. I live right here in the mecca of bass fishing. Really, you can be on. I can leave out of my driveway here on Sand Mountain and be in on the north end of Gunnersville, like Scottsboro, Goose Pond area, in about 40 minutes, and I can be at Chester Frost Park on Chickamauga in about 35 minutes. So I kind of claim both of those. Nickajack, which is the lake on the Tennessee River between those two lakes, is like 6 minutes from my driveway. Um, but also I'm an hour from the Coosa River, and I learned how to fish on Neely Henry and Weiss Lake, and so those are the ones that I consider my, like, where I cut my teeth. So um, I'd say I'm a big northern Coosa River guy, and Gunnersville has always been kind of a enigma to me. I really didn't like it at all for a lot of years after I started bass fishing. And one year I just forced myself to fish. I just fished like 20 tournaments on it and just made myself learn to love it. And now I really enjoy going there. I was kind of hoping we'd end up there on the opens this year, since we were on Wheeler last year, but they're sending us to Logan Martin, which is a little bit outside. I don't think I've been on Logan Martin since 2009. Uh, I fished a sheriff's office charity tournament down there, and I think I came in like 80th place or something. So, really, I'll try not to draw from that experience at all when I go down there for practice.
For sure. It's funny though. You mentioned about having to make yourself like a lake, and that's the exact same way I was with Lake Lanier.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I grew up running around on Lanier. Like, my dad, my uncle, they were kind of the ones that got me into fishing. My uncle, he had an old Ranger bass boat that we used to go out on. And then, kind of when they got up in age and some health conditions that were they couldn't wind a rod all day, they got into striper
Mm-hmm.
fishing, and they actually ran a guide service on Lanier.
Oh, that's
And
cool.
so I spent some time, with them when I was younger, but I got where I just hated Lanier. Like, I never wanted to go to it. And so I consider Hartwell kind of my home lake. That's where I spend most of my time. But, in the last couple years, um, I mean, you don't have to look much into bass fishing to see some of the crazy weights that are getting caught on spotted bass on Lanier. And mean, I don't think it's too far fetched to say it's probably the best spotted bass fishery in the country right now.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
And just hearing buddies, just the way that they were going out and whacking them, it made me, I wanted to go catch, a 30-pound bag of spots, because that's just unheard of. But
Mm-hmm.
I just hated the lake. Well, I forced myself to go a lot, and started fishing it. And then when I really started having a lot of fun with it was, a good friend of mine. He's in a little club that was putting on a Friday nighter on there, so I started going over there with him and fishing Friday nighters and just kind of screwing around and having fun with it. But I kind of got in it right on the insane topwater bite that was on Lanier this year, so it made me really like the lake a lot more than I used to the point now where I'll go fish it a lot more than I would in the past. But like I said, I had to do the same thing you had to do on Gunnersville, just kind of force myself into it.
Yeah, yeah. I like Lanier. I've been there a couple of times, and I know guys now that, which is kind of, it was unheard of when I started fishing, but I know guys now that drive 3 or 4 hours, 2 or 3 times a year just to go over there and fish on Lanier and catch those
Mm-hmm.
big spots. And it didn't used to be that way, but there's some giant largemouth on that lake too.
Oh yeah.
Which I think is a testament just to the fishery itself and the habitat, or the ecosystem that is able to survive there. Those they grow big fish in that lake, and it's cool. I'd like to see us end up over there at some point too. But
They're going to have to build some ramps that would actually be
yeah,
able
they're
to
going to have
hold
to
an
find a
event.
place for us. Right? Yeah, yeah.
I know even like the BFLs that go out of there, they go out of Laurel Park way up the river. And
Mm-hmm.
I know, well, even speaking like the NPFL, they went there this year. They were there just a couple of weeks ago, or I guess now it would have been last
Right.
week. But, they do the drive through weigh in, where
Mm-hmm.
boat up to stage. Well, those guys were having to get out there at Laurel Park and then drive all the way to Coolray Stadium down towards Buford to weigh in. And I'm just like, you got this awesome fishery, like build a
Mm-hmm.
freak, build a freaking ramp. I mean,
All it really takes is for one of the municipalities around there to recognize, kind of like Dayton did up on Chickamauga, and like Gunnersville is embraced on the south end of Gunnersville. There are, once a town realizes the positive benefits of having those big tournament trails come through once or
mm,
twice, 3 times a year, and the type of money that it really just surges into your local economy, that somebody will do it.
yeah, somebody like
There,
Buford or Cumming or somebody like step up, do it, because I guarantee you, if you build the facility and do it, like it won't take long, and I'd say you'd see a classic on Lanier.
no, I
Like,
agree. I agree.
could you like that would be
That'd be
big
wild.
pre spawn tournament
Oh
on
yeah,
Lanier, like that would be a good time.
you'd see some record weights come out of it too.
Oh, 100%.
Uh,
And I mean,
because those,
there's plenty of facilities like in those towns that could host the weigh-in, host the expo, and all those things
Mhm.
like they do with the classic. It's just you just got to have a ramp that can hold those kind of people. Because I remember
Right.
when I went up to Green Pond on day one of the classic, the last time it was on Hartwell, and I mean there was like 2,000 people at the ramp for takeoff on day one.
Yeah.
Like, you gotta have a facility that can have a turnout like that, plus vendor space and all that. And
Mm-hmm.
it's just going to take somebody investing in that to be able to host an event like that on Lanier. But it's a special fishery, no doubt, and I'm
Yeah.
glad that I forced myself to really appreciate it, because where I live, I'm on Lanier in about 30 minutes, and I'm on Hartwell in about 30 minutes. I'm right in between them.
Yeah. That's
So
perfect.
it's awesome having it, what I would call in my backyard here.
Yeah. Yeah, that's perfect. I remember, I think when I first started fishing the opens, that first one that I fished, uh, Dayton was coming along. Like, they had already started Fish Dayton and had their team there, but the Dayton boat dock hadn't renovated. The parking lot wasn't very big. The parking wasn't great. And I think we ended up driving uh, and having the weigh-in at the from there, we drove the fish all the way back down to the Bass Pro Shop for the weigh-in, and that was like a little over an hour drive. And I remember thinking, man, if it was only a place that we could do this a little bit closer,
Yeah.
And I didn't really realize that. I guess it just goes to show you like how much growth there still is available in the sport. Because we traveled all over the country this year. I saw places, drove into states that I'd never been into in my life, and saw places with absolute phenomenal fisheries with thousands of fish. The kind of places that you can catch fish every cast or every other cast from daylight to dark. And it felt like several of the communities just hadn't embraced it yet. And I don't understand it. I don't remember. I'm not going to quote the year, but like 2018, 19, something like that. Non-commercial fishing was like a $2.8 billion industry. And that was just license sales and equipment. That was just everybody going on the bank and fishing, taking their grandkids and stuff like that. And it's only grown since then. I mean, it's a huge, huge industry as far as the benefit to local economies. And so I would love to see more smaller municipalities take on that role and build some places for our, the bigger trails that we've got to really come and spread their wings and feel comfortable. I promise you, MLF and Bass, they will do anything they can to promote those fisheries in those towns and bring that, a lot of times much needed surge of money into those local economies. So I'd love to see it happen in more places.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that because that's what I was about to say. When these trails come in, it's not like that, we're just coming in, taking up space, doing our thing. Like I know MLF specifically, like every time we go to a BFL, they have like, a community relation there where they're partnering with an organization from the community that's in that host town that we're in, that's helping with promotion, that's helping with, even down to like lodging and meals and stuff like that, to where anglers that are traveling from out of town, it makes it super easy for us, like working with these community groups, because you kind of take for granted some things of, where's the most convenient place for me to stay? Where should I go eat? Like, where can I get the, gas, ice, like, the little things that you don't really think about until you're in an area that you're not familiar with. But that's one thing I really like about MLF is, and I know Bass does it too, but, they really try to get, build partnerships with people inside the communities at these host towns and I've seen them do some bizarre things to try to be at a certain area, to use different ramps to, to help stimulate that local economy and stuff, because, they want to be able to come back next year and the year after and the year after that. And then, for other trails that they do, the high school, the college stuff, it's not like we just want to come in one day like a college ranger, trash it and leave. Like,
right.
These
Right.
organizations want these long-term relationships so that we can help, keep that fishery what it is, and then make it even better, so that we can come back and continue to enjoy this, so that when my sons start, tournament bass fishing, they're able to go to these lakes and enjoy it the same way you and I are.
Absolutely. It's not like we're inviting a bunch of meat eaters into every town to take all the fish out of the lake and go home and have a big fish fry. I mean, you're most of the time. Well, I can say for sure with bass, you're bringing 200 of the strongest conservation minded fishermen in the country into your area, and all they want to do is catch them and be able to catch them again the next year. And so they're really, I mean, sometimes they get a bad rap. There's always a perfect storm where you've got a tournament and the weather's awful and the lake turns over and there's not enough oxygen and it's hot and the fish are deep, or whatever the situation is that causes that high mortality rate. And it happens. But I mean, I don't know with these large organizations, I don't know nobody does anything any more for conservation and the sport of especially bass fishing than these guys. And so there's really no reason for a community to not be excited about seeing us coming.
Absolutely. Yeah. And, on the fish care thing, it's easy to see some of those issues when MLF or when bass comes in because there's cameras everywhere, right? Whereas
That's right.
the reality of it is, I go and fish, like I said, that Friday night or, just local tournaments and stuff. And you can be on the lake the next day or two and just to see the fish that are floating around after those where there's like no, there's no fish care involved. Like these guys, I don't want to say they don't care, but it's just like they don't go to the same lengths as bass and MLF to make sure, that the resource is being taken care of. They don't have the holding tanks with, oxygenators in it and everything else while you're leading up to weigh in and release boats that are taking the fish back out. Like they're just dumping them off the dock and, pulling them out of 40 foot of water and not fizzing them and things like that. So, as a tournament angler, conservation always has to be in the forefront of your mind because I don't want this to be my last season that I get to fish competitively.
Right.
I'm already looking like my oldest son, he turns 4 in January and like, he already loves being on the lake. He loves going fishing every chance we can. And like, I'm just sitting here patiently waiting. Like I cannot wait to be able to fish a tournament with my son. Like,
I'm the same way.
just a local tournament, whatever. As soon as he's able to like stay focused and stay on the lake all day, like I cannot wait to start running local stuff with him. But I want that resource to exist and I want it to be better so that I can teach him what little bit I know, which isn't much, but then give him that foundation that he can build on it and, reach his goals significantly faster than I am.
Right. Right. Yeah, that makes it. I'm in the same boat. My son just turned 6, and we went to the lake. Actually, that's all he wants to do is hunt and fish. And we went to the lake for his birthday, and he like officially caught his first fish, making his own cast, filling the bite, setting the hook, and fighting it to the boat. And I was like, man, you can't stop us now. We're cooking with grease. Like if I can get him to focus for more than about 3 hours at a time, we'll be fishing tournaments together.
Yeah, I'm going to build some of those team trails.
That's right. That's right. That kid, he's eat up with it. I thought I liked it, but he loves it.
And that's awesome. Seeing it through their eyes is it's incredible. Like I love it. My son, he's not to the point of, he's not casting and setting the hook and all, but he'll reel one in. And,
oh, yeah.
We started him out on like a little kid rod and he don't even like that anymore because he associates that like dad's rods catch more fish, so now we'll usually take just take one of my spinning rods, put a little swim bait on it, and I'll try to, live scope some schools and stuff just to where, something to bite fast, but he'll reel every one of them in and he thinks he has to like hold and touch and take a picture with every single fish that comes in. Just, he gets like this giddy laugh every time we flip a fish in the boat and it doesn't get old.
That's cool, man. No, you'll never get over that.
I have more fun watching him catch 12-inch bass than I do, the bass that I caught last year that won that big bass plaque behind me. Like I care more about watching him catch these little dinks than that largemouth that got me a paycheck.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Well, at the end of the day, I think that's what it's about anyway. I mean, we're only really, when we leave this earth, we're only leaving one thing behind, and it's the life that we led and the kids that we raised to take our place. And I think that's the most important thing anyway. So
yeah, that's your legacy right there.
Yeah.
Who's gonna remember you the most? The ones that you invested your time into, or the ones that watched you, chase your dream?
That's right. Nobody's gonna remember who won the third Bassmaster Open in 2024, but he'll remember.
Absolutely.
He'll know exactly what I showed him and what we did together, and that's what matters.
Mm-hmm. And he'll remember those Sunday evenings that y'all went and spent on the lake together.
That's right.
Well, Tripp, what would you say? We've talked a lot about tournaments, kind of obviously our passions for it. I think we're both equally competitive when it comes to it. So say we got some people that were like us before we got into, you know, actually taking that leap into getting into these higher level tournaments. What's some advice that you might give somebody that's, you know, looking at maybe taking that step out of the local level, and maybe even if it's just jumping in a BFL or fishing the opens or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
What do you wish somebody would have told you when you were mentally preparing yourself for taking that step?
Um, I think the most important part is to just know yourself uh, as well as you can. Really know what makes you tick and what you're capable of before you put yourself in a situation to be, judged on a weight sheet. Because you got to know that you can catch fish and that you understand the water and why fish do what they do. Doesn't always matter why they do what they do, but you need to know what they do and where they're doing it. And so I'd say the most important thing to me is just making sure that you feel that you're comfortable in what you're doing. And I think that um, fishing currently, competitive tournament angling right now is kind of, it's really in a weird place. And I think over the next 3 to 5 years or so, we're going to see a lot of things change. We're going to see a lot of things go back to where they kind of were maybe 5 or 6 years ago. And I think that, I think it's going to take on a much different look than it does now as far as the way the programs work and the rules and what's allowed and what's not. There's a lot of emphasis right now. I mean, people say you can't win if you don't know electronics, and um, I don't agree with that at all. There's a lot of times that I go fishing and don't even turn them on. But I think that when you get to the level that you're interested in fishing, you know, like something like we're doing, fishing Toyotas and opens and trying to uh, make it what you do for a living, you can't really afford that luxury. That's something that I had to come to Jesus with earlier this year, was that I know I can catch fish and I can catch them up shallow. I used to say if my boat was over 10 foot of water, then something happened. I broke down and drifted out there. But the truth is, you've got to be as well rounded as possible. Then you look at the pros that we consider to be the top of the top on either side, Bass or MLF, the Brandon Pollinocks and the Jacob Wheelers and those guys. They understand every technique, every type of fish, every type of fishery. They know where to go look and find fish that will win tournaments. And it's important to have that type of confidence and that type of time on the water and experience with all the different techniques and stuff, because you got to know how to catch them. Don't think that because you enjoy tournament fishing that you can step up into some of these higher level places and just continue with lucky success, because it really doesn't. Luck doesn't play much of a part into it these days. I'd say 10%.
Well, that and luck's not sustainable for a whole season.
That's right. You have to get real lucky. We thought at the beginning of this year, I talked to several of the guys in the EQs, several of the guys that had been fishing opens, and we really felt like that if you could sustain a low to mid 50s finish through the year, average finish through the year, that you'd probably be looking at a top 10 in points by the end of the season. And we were way off. I mean, those guys, the guys that made it to the elites this year, averaged like a 28th place finish, which is unfathomable when you think about the places that we went. And JT was his worst finish, I think, was like 42nd or 49th at Eufaula, our very first tournament, and then he didn't fall out of the top 30 again for a single tournament. I think he had like 4 top 10s and he won one. And that kind of
that's not
ability.
Luck. Just for y'all know,
that's not luck.
That is
no.
not luck. That
No,
is an
that's
absolute hammer on the water.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I was proud for him. I'm proud to see young guys like that be able to put it together so well and hold on to it. I wish that we all say it. We all of us that are in our late 30s and up wish that there had been high school and college level fishing teams when we were doing it, and um, and that the sponsors in the industry were as interested in getting folks our age into the fishing community as they are now.
Yeah.
All I heard about when I was in high school and college was you need to get your degree and go get a job and start making money and quit worrying about doing things like fishing. And they give out scholarships for that stuff now.
That's
I mean,
what I
you can
always
get your
said.
degree fishing.
Yeah. And that's what I said. Like, it would have, if you wanted me to finish school and fishing had been an option when I was in school, I would have never played sports probably because let's be
No.
honest, me and my buddies, well, where I grew up, it was either like play sports or do drugs. And
Mm-hmm.
so me and all my buddies, we were like skipping practice and skipping school to go fishing. Like if you wanted to keep us in school, like I can only imagine what we would have been able to do if there had been a high school bass fishing team at my high school
Oh, yeah.
or college or whatever. Like, yeah, that
That's right.
I joked for a while just saying that I was born in the wrong time. I was born about 5 years too early.
Yeah. That's me too. Either I was born too early or too late. I could have been born 200 years ago. I would have loved to have been a pirate. Me and Jimmy Buffett, we would have been pirates. But I just, as a matter of fact, my entire persona next year, I think, is going to take on that of somewhat some kind of pirate feel. I've got the boat done for next year already, and it's it's got like the Jolly Rogers in the background and the Ghost graphics in the background. It's got a bunch of the Fisher Dive logos, decals on it, and I'm really excited about that. I told the guys down at Excel when they were doing the boat that he asked me if I had anything in mind for a theme, and I said, "Man, I really just want to go drive a pirate ship around all year if I can." So I think they hit that on the head for me. So
Yeah, so right there it is, everybody. If you're watching this on the video, you can see the pirate theme there, the Jolly Rogers theme on Tripp's boat wrap there that he'll be running next year, and I love it. I mean, it's clean, but then it's got that background in there that really stands out. I like that a lot.
yeah. Yeah, it's cool. I'm excited about it. I completely inverted it too. The wrap was all black this year, and I wanted to do something to set us apart next year, just visually at least. At blast offs and things of that nature. There were a lot of black boats and matte finish boats and stuff this year in the tournaments, and I just felt like we needed to stand out a little more. A lot of that at this level when you get up. When you get to a certain point, things like that, your visibility and your ability to carry yourself on the stage and maintain the audience's attention when you're talking on the mic and things of that nature, that's what sets a lot of us off also. And some things that I felt like I needed to work on through the year. I'm going to try to get better about next year too, is just developing that on stage and public persona that people are interested in seeing. I mean, as long as you've been following bass fishing, there are guys that have that personality and they can command a room. Doesn't matter if they hadn't caught a fish in 20 years. I mean, anytime Gerald Swindle puts a video on the internet, I'm going to watch it until he's gone. You know what I mean? Because
That's exactly who I was about to mention.
Yeah. Well, I mean, those guys, he's one that always sticks out because he is so special in who he is. Ike Anelli's the same way. But really, even Kevin Van Dam, you put his face on a screen and let him start talking about something, and I'm going to tractor beam in on him. You know what I mean? Just because when you carry that persona of a person who cares about what they're doing and cares about other people doing it and carries yourself well in the public, and, you're not out there pissing people off every time you get on the water or getting in some fight, that kind of thing frustrates me because I think that at the end of the day, like this year, we had 173 guys in the EQ, and I think honestly, I think all 173 of us would have been happy for all 173 of us to make it. And I don't think it's not necessary to have like a bad boy persona or the guy that's got to get out there and piss everybody off. Or, I mean, some people use that to their advantage because there's not a lot of us that like being that guy.
Right.
But I think it is important, though, to carry yourself well and maintain some type of personality that folks can relate to. And so that's what we're going to work on some this year.
Well, that's awesome, man. We definitely we look forward to following you throughout the EQs this next year. Wish you the best of luck, and you'll be right here come October, right here in my area,
I hope so.
up here on Hartwell.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, that's a fun time on that lake.
it is. I'm excited about it. I've had one of my better tournaments, probably my best tournament I've had there was in November. I fished the ABA's national championship, the Ray Scott national championship. I think was 3 years ago, 4 years ago now over there, and I really enjoyed that tournament. And I had only been there a couple times before, but I like that lake, that type of year. You can catch them pretty much any way you want to.
Yeah.
So I'm excited to be back there. I got lucky this year. I think we've got this past year, 23 season, we had 9 tournaments, and I had been to 2 of the lakes before. And next year, I think I've been to like 6 of the 9, which is significantly better for me to have at least some earlier knowledge about how to run around on them and where I'd found, what type of areas I found fish in the past. So I'm excited about it.
So are we, man. We look forward to it. So for anybody that wants to follow along with you, where can they follow you on social media or where else?
Yeah, so I've got a Facebook fishing page. It's just Tripp Noojin Fishing. And then I've also got a Instagram account that I probably spend more time on than anything, and it's Eddie J _Nuge. It's a remnant from a old high school nickname, but Eddie J Nuge that's me on Instagram. So come give me a like and a follow, and I try to follow everybody else back too. I think it's so crazy to me in all these communities how folks just are so eager to have as much support as they can get, but so reluctant to give support back. So I try to, you give me a like and a follow, I'm going to give you a follow, and we'll watch us all do this thing together.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, well, like I said, we definitely look forward to seeing what you do next year. Hopefully about this time we can have you back on and start talking about your Elite Series plans and things of that nature. Cool. But we appreciate you coming and jumping on. You kind of you already answered one of our questions that we throw out to our guests, about some fishing memories. You talked about some good times you had on the Harris chain and stuff through the EQs this year. But there's one other question that we like to ask, and I'm going to slide this in there real quick before we wrap up. When in all your prep, when you're loading the boat and loading your truck and heading out to the lake, what is one thing that you always have to take with you fishing that has absolutely nothing to do with fishing?
Ooh, that's a tough one. That's a tough one because my wife would say that I carry everything. I take the kitchen sink with me when I go. I mean, the truck's full, the boat's full. There's nothing. People go to Bass Pro Shop to see if they can find what they need, and when Bass Pro doesn't have it, they come find me on the water somewhere because I've probably got it in the boat. But I don't know. I don't know. The regular answer would be, I mean, a lot of us carry toilet paper out there because sometimes you got to do what you got to do, and sometimes you can't find a place to get off the boat. You just do what you got to do in the water. But I've got
you and me on a very similar thought process there, because mine was I keep my handy pack of dude wipes there for that.
Yeah,
that maintenance wipe whenever you got to get things cleaned up afterwards.
Yeah. Man, I don't know. I keep a little Hulk figurine, little action figurine that I got in I spent a lot of years in law enforcement. I said that earlier. And early on in my career, I got really interested in the training aspects of it. And I spent a lot of time developing my skills in firearms and tactical team movements and things of that nature. And I kind of had a few, I guess, idols in that space that were just the best of the best in training in that area at the time. And I went through one of their classes early on. It was I think it was like a dark gunfighter class. It was all about being in a gunfight around vehicles and low light conditions and less than stellar conditional situations. And I ended up winning at some point. I won some type of little competition in it, or a couple of different little things. And at the end of the week, the instructors kind of had some things to give out to folks, and they like specifically identified a couple of us as real standouts in the class. And they brought me this little figurine. They said that they gave a superhero to at least one person in every class. And they brought me this little Hulk figurine because they felt like that was my persona out there in that class. And I've carried that thing with me everywhere I've gone for probably, it's probably been 13, 14 years now. And so that he goes everywhere with me. I've always got the Hulk somewhere in the boat or on the dash of the truck, and now he's like one of my 6-year-old's favorite people in the world too. So
that's awesome.
We've always got some Hulk stuff around.
That's a good one for sure. Well, Tripp, this has been a great conversation. I've really enjoyed being able to talk about some stuff that I'm a little more familiar with and kind of get to step away from the fly fishing content that we've been putting out lately. That's kind of been more Justin and Papa's world over there. So this was a nice break for me. But we
Cool.
greatly appreciate you coming on. Absolutely. So we look forward to we look forward to having you back on again sometime. But then we wish you the best of luck on your season. We'll be keeping track of it and following along with you. And so for all of our listeners out there, make sure you head over and give Tripp a follow and show him some love throughout his season. And then while you're on there, make sure, if you're not already, go check out the Fish Lift Eat Official on Instagram. And then we're also on TikTok at Fish Lift Eat. And then so to go pick up all your Fish Lift Eat gear so that we can see it out there on the water and what you're doing with it, head over to huntlift.eat.com and get you a shirt, a hat, and all that good stuff, gearing up for the holidays here, and tag us in it, and so that we can follow along with you as well. But until next week, y'all keep them lines wet, and we'll catch you on the next cast. See ya.